Good morning, or good morning, good morning, good morning. Right, welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to see everybody. I feel like it's been forever, right? It's been way too long since we were able to sync up. I think it was with the holiday. We had the U.S. Thanksgiving last Thursday, and then I think there might have been a uh, scheduling conflict because I was doing some client meetings on the East Coast. So 9:30 is great when you're on the West Coast, right? It's awesome. But when you're on the East Coast working with clients, 9:30 is right in the middle of that workday. So I think we actually missed a few of our sessions, but I'm so happy to see you virtually. So happy to see my friend Vic. Buenos dias, right? I need my Buenos dias. I feel like I was lacking. But Vic, I do have to say, though, that you weren't the first this morning, right? Our friend Deatre actually beat you in with a question this morning. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Glad to see a little healthy competition going on there. So good morning, good morning. Hope everyone is having an awesome week. Happy December 1st, right? One more month to go, right? One more month to go to start knocking things out. But here's what I want to challenge you on. Why wait until January 1st? What is so special about some date on the calendar, right? It really isn't. And what I'm referring to is you have everybody on January 1st, right? New Year's resolutions, a new year. I'm like, start today, right? December 1st. What is one thing that if you started doing every day consistently could alter the trajectory of your life? And I know that sounds like a powerful statement, but it could be something as simple as going to the gym, right? Either after work or lunch today, or depending on your work schedule, is start hitting the gym every day. Think about that. If you exercised every day, that could change the trajectory of your life. So that could be a body one, or it could be something. What if you wrote a note to your significant other every day? You wrote them a little message. If you get up before them, maybe you leave a little message in the bathroom sink or on the table, or I'm old school, right? So you use paper pen, or you can just text it to them. But what if you sent them a message every day, a short little note on what you really appreciate about them and how much you love or care for them? And it could be a child, it could be anyone. You're telling me if you didn't start doing that every day, that couldn't change the trajectory of your life? Or what if it's on business? Where what if you put out a video every day? Every day you started recording and putting out video and content to your followers. You're telling me in a year that couldn't significantly impact or change your business. So I just urge you is let's not wait another 30 days, right? Let's engage now. What is one thing you can start doing that could positively impact or change that trajectory of your life? So just wanted to throw that out there. So let's go ahead and get started with the questions. What would you like to see in a CV while hiring a manager director for information security risk management? And does he or she need to be mandatory ISACA C-Risk certified? So I'm going to actually take this backwards. Certifications are good. Certifications show that you've put in a level of work to achieve it, and you have a level of knowledge. But let's be clear. There is one reason and one reason alone why somebody hires you. And there's one reason and one reason alone why somebody does not fire you. And that is, can you do the job? Can you do the job effectively? And ideally, can you do the job in an optimal way, potentially better than anybody else? That's really what a hiring manager is looking for. They're going in and saying, who out of all these CVs can do the job better than anyone else? So if you don't have a lot of experience, certifications help because it can offset it, right? They look and say, okay, the person has done this risk management for a few years. I like 5 years. They only did it for three, but they have a cert. So that shows me they have the discipline and focus and knowledge and expertise. So it's a good offset. But in my experience, as you get more experience, the certs become less important. Like right now, with where I'm at, when I bid on jobs, or I still do some direct work or things like that, or I do some direct coaching and helping folks, nobody really asks what certs I have. Sorry, little cough there. Nobody really asks or cares. So remember, certs are a good offset to augment lack of experience until you can get to that point. So, depending on where you are in the number of years experience would be whether you should or should not get that certification. And then back to the what a hiring manager is looking for. Let's really quickly run through this. A CV has one purpose and one purpose alone. Should they bring you in for an interview? That's it. Because once they meet you and talk to you and interview you, the CV is irrelevant. Right? The CV is merely, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications, and I need to know which of the five I should bring in. That's the sole purpose of it. The other thing that most people don't realize is CVs are reviewed by HR people or hiring managers, not on what you have, but what you're missing. They're looking for exclusion. So they're going to read it and say, oh, this is a technical person, toss it. Or they're going to read it and go, oh, this is not a risk person to talk. They're not looking at the CV and saying, I love this person, let's hire them. They're looking at the CV and saying, do they have the minimal requirements to them to pass to the next level? So what you want to be really careful on your CV is there's nothing that screams the opposite of the position you're hiring for. That's the biggest mistake I see, and I review a lot of CVs. I help anyone who's one of my coaching clients. That's one of my uh, tasks that I do with them is I go through and thoroughly review their CVs. And what I'm really doing 90% of the time, I'm removing stuff. There's sentences or phrases that basically derail your train. So you're sitting there and applying for a risk management position or a director of information security. And in your CV, you say, you are responsible for patching and updating all the servers in your organization. That screams IT engineer, right? That screams engineer. That doesn't scream manager director. And if I was looking at the CV and I saw that, I'd be like, okay, this is an engineer pretending or wanting to be a manager, but they really don't have the experience. If that's something out of a summarized position of a job that they've done for 5 years, that's something they feel is important enough to tell me, and they're out there an engineer, right? So those are the things you want to be looking for is make sure there's nothing that's inconsistent in that CV that's going to make them think you are not really that manager or director. What should a government CISO focus on when profit doesn't apply? So great question. What it comes down to then is what they should be focusing on is risk to the organization. So when I brief systems, I recommend whether you're government or not government, when you brief the board, and in government it might not be the board, it might be the managers, the executive teams, whatever you call them, but you're basically going in and saying what could happen, what is the likelihood of it happening, what is the cost if it occurs, and what is the cost to fix it. So if you're looking at those four primary drivers, they really have nothing to do with profit. They really have what could be the impact to the organization. Now, yes, in commercial organizations, the impact could be loss of profit, but loss of reputation, loss of government secrets, all those types of things are just as important. So you would still focus in on the same things of what could happen, what is the likelihood of it occurring, what is the impact if it happens, and what is the cost to fix it. Right. So when I say what is the cost if it occurs, That doesn't have to be profit. That could be reputation, that could be impact, that could be budgets. I'll tell you right now, you look at government agencies, if they don't do a good job or they get hacked or have issues, their budgets could be cut. Right? And that could be significant impact to the organization. So you don't have profit, but remember, you do have revenue. Right? Every company, whether it's government, nonprofit, no matter what you name out there, needs money to run, and they're getting money from somewhere. Whether it's from taxpayers or whether it's from customers, right? There's still money and revenue. So I wouldn't focus on the profit. I'd focus on the revenue, the impact, and the reputation to the business or the organization. Don't you think using a word confidentiality gives wrong perspective, as during the classification we need to consider CIA, not only the C, so using something like highly sensitive would be more accurate. I'm trying to push this together. I don't think word C gives a wrong perspective. So I guess it's what are you classifying, right? If you look at we look at the government definition of classification, or let's go into confidential, secret, top secret. What is the government definition of confidential? If this information was disclosed, it would cause harm to the nation. That is confidential. Secret is if this information was disclosed, would cause significant harm to the nation. And top secret is if this information is disclosed, it would cause grave damage to the nation. So what we're trying to protect is disclosure, and that's confidentiality. So no, I do think if you're talking about labeling information that should not be disclosed, and that's if disclosure could impact the organization, no, confidentiality is the right word, because that's what confidentiality is: prevent, detect, deter the unauthorized disclosure of information, right, to an entity or an organization. So that's really what you're talking about there. So now, yes, if you have information that you want to make sure is always available, right, or can't be altered or modified or things like that, then yeah, highly sensitive can be in place. But when you're talking classification isn't considering CIA. Classification, as the government defines it, is focusing solely on confidentiality. Classifying documents in the government is all about protecting the disclosure of the data. It has nothing to do with protecting the accuracy of the data, and it has nothing to do with protecting the availability of the data. So I do agree with you. In corporate settings or other settings, you do want to be aware of all three, right? You do want to make sure confidentiality, integrity, availability are all taken care of. But when you're talking about the classification process, as the government defines it, the classification process is solely focused on protecting disclosure, which is solely focused on confidentiality. You talk a lot about choosing to be happy and having a positive mindset. What's your take on stoicism, and does it have a place in your life? Oh, I love Zach. You're going deep with me. You're going deep with me. Yes, I actually do believe, and once again, the question was asked, so take it for what you think, that everything does happen for a reason, right? And everything is there to teach you a lesson. Because here's how I look at it. You really have two choices. You have two choices in the world. You live in a hostile universe that wants to cause harm, or you live in a friendly universe that wants to help you and support you. Right? Those are really your two choices. Now, I'm not saying that if we pick the second, that we're in the land of unicorns and rainbows, right? And nothing happens that you potentially could say is bad. But I'm saying, what if the universe is a friendly universe and is there to help you. And when things don't go as you thought they were going, maybe it was to teach you a lesson. And maybe that lesson that you learn will then help you elevate or move to levels quicker and faster. So in my world, bad things don't happen, right? Things go that aren't as planned, but my job is to figure out what is the lesson that I need to learn here, and then how do I make sure I don't do it again? And yes, I study Stoicism. I love, but by the way, if you like reading, I love Ryan Holiday's books. I don't know if you've read all of them. There's one in there where he does sort of a history of Stoicism, which I don't like as much. But all of his others, like the obstacle is the way. I'll tell you, Ryan's books I read every year. Every year, whenever I sort of get stuck or I feel like I'm in a slump or things aren't going, I sort of always read his books. So he has The Obstacle is the Way, which is a great one. Stillness and Silence. I might get the title wrong, but how just being quiet and listening and having thinking time is very, very effective. So yes, I find like Marcus Arias and some of their teachings is very, very powerful, because what they're really focusing on is that you create your life. You're 100% responsible for what happens, and it just gives you a great perspective. So yes, to answer your question, I do think the teachings of the Stoics, it has an impact on my life. It is very powerful. Reading them directly, you can do. I find it's not as engaging because it's written in the older language, so you can pull the nuggets out. But I really, really love and respect Ryan Holiday because he's really studied it and pulled them out. And just look at his books. His books do a great job of really showing you the key areas and teaching it in a way that's very, very easy to understand. Should I continue to study for the CISSP or should I take a different route? It depends. So a couple questions here. Where would you like to be in 3 years? So if we were having an open discussion, I would now do a Q&A with you because I want to get you your answer, and you typing answers will take too quick. I'll just sort of answer for you. So if you're telling me that you want to be a CISO in the next 2 to 3 years, I'd say probably not. If you're saying that you don't work in security right now and you want to work in security and you want to transition into security over the next 2 or 3 years, then yes, the CISSP might be helpful. And it goes back to what I said earlier. The less experience you have, the more valuable the CISSP is. Any cert for that matter. So the less experience, the more valuable it is. If you have 8, 10, or 12 years experience in cybersecurity, then getting the cert isn't going to be as helpful to you. So it really depends on the experience, where you're at, and whether that CISSP or any cert is really going to help augment you to get to that next level. The next question is, you should continue. How far are you on the path? If you've already studied for 40, 50 hours, I would say continue. I mean, something in you has driven you to get that far. You're more than halfway there. You're more than halfway there. Don't quit the marathon halfway through, right? I'm a big fan of, if you decide to run a race and you start the race, you finish the race. Right? Now, you can decide not to run the race, but if you actually show up to race day and you start running, you should finish it. So when you say continue, I'd want to understand a little bit of how far along you are. Like if you're only 2 hours or you just bought a book, you didn't do anything, that's different. But if you're 30, 40, 50 hours committed, then I would probably say at that point, why not just finish? There was something in you, a burning desire that got you that far that you thought you needed your CISSP, and you might as well continue. You might as well push through and knock it out. Here's the bottom line. It will not hurt you having it, no matter what position you're in. If I still have, that's one of the few certs I hold on to. I actually still have my CISSP. It doesn't hurt me. Does it help me in my current job and position? I don't know, maybe, maybe not, but it doesn't really hurt me. So getting a CISSP is not going to be a negative. It will absolutely, no matter how you look at it, be a net positive. The question is, do you need it? Is it worth the time, energy, and effort to get it? Is really the question you have to answer. So hopefully that gave you enough data so you can sort of figure out which way to go. If you were asked to be a CISO for a friend's small company, where would you start? Okay, being honest, if it's a small company and there's only two people in the company, are you really a CISO? Do they really need a CISO? Right? So my first question would be is, are you really playing the role of a CISO, or you're really coming in and just being a security engineer, right, to help them fix and secure their issues? Because I would argue that a two-person company doesn't need a CISO. But at that front, it'd be pretty simple. What is their critical data and information? What are the things that could cause harm or cause damage? And then make sure that's properly protected and secured. Easiest solution, outsource everything. Right? If you're two, three, four, small company, you shouldn't be running your own mail server. You shouldn't be running your own systems. You should outsource all of that. You have services like the Microsoft Office 365 and those different services out there that have all the integrated Windows Defender security, all those features built in, and they can basically take care of all the spam, the filtering, and all that. And it's fairly reasonable. It's based on number of seats. So really all I would focus on in that case, if it's a two-person company, is just getting everything outsourced and make sure that the proper settings are in place, that everything is properly secure and locked down. I always struggle to find out the dollar value of data we carry in the organization. Is there a specific framework or formula to measure the same? It's one to I don't know if misery likes company, right? But it is something that a lot of people do struggle with. A lot of people do have a hard time with it. And the reason is there is no easy, simple way to quantify. The way you typically put a dollar value on the data is two things. What would be the impact if it was not available? I said two, it's actually three, sorry. So, first, what would be the impact to the organization if the data is not available? So, if that data was gone and not available, what would be the impact? Would there be loss of business, reputation, or other issues? Second, how long would it take to rebuild or recover the data? So, for example, if you're telling me every day the data is not available is going to cost us 100K and it's going to take 30 days to rebuild that data set, that's basically 3 million. So those are the calculations. And then the last one is based on sensitivity of the data. If that data was publicly exposed, what would be the fines that would be levied on the company for not properly protecting or securing that information? And then you basically add those three up. So if it's data where there's no regulation around it, the organization could function without it. It's a nice to have, and you can get it back in a day, right? Then it's a low cost. On the other hand, if it takes a long time, huge impact to the business and fines and regulation, then it'll be a high impact. But those are usually the three data points or data sets that we use in calculating or determining the value of that data. But NIST and FIPS are saying to classify information, you need to consider the impact on CIA and give the levels of high, moderate, or low. Don't they talk about confidentially secret or top secret? Okay, I'd have to go back, Akam, on what specifically you're referencing, because yes, NIST and FIPS They do talk about looking at the impact of those, but that's going beyond the classification. That's when you're starting looking at risk. And remember that with NIST and FIPS, you do have the different standards. You have some that focus on confidentiality, some on integrity, some on availability. So I think, and I'd have to go back and see if they're actually using the word classification there, but I think we're missing up the risk to the organization and the specific focus on one of the three of the CIA. So once again, whatever NIST or FIP says, if that's what you have to follow, then follow. But typically there's a framework for each one of those three that you need to consider what the impact is to the disclosure, the alteration, or the denial of access to that information. What would be your take on these two? CISO with a business degree and a technical certification, and CISO with an engineering degree and business related certifications. Awesome. I mean, to me, they're both roads lead to the same place, right? So in both cases, you had a business degree with technical certs, which means you have both, or a technical degree with business certs. Honestly, but both of them seem really nice to me. I would go back in those cases and say which one has more experience. So I wouldn't necessarily pick one is better than the other. Right now, looking at both, I'd say they're pretty much equal, right? They're just different ways to get to that same end point. It's just what is the experience level that is in place there? And that would be the final discrimination between them. My opinion is CISSP is a generic cert that gives context, but not an effective cert that teaches operations. It is a check the box for many agencies, but not as focused as a specific cert. That's fair. I mean, most certs are really focused on general knowledge. And I would agree that CISSP is probably one of the broader ones. Right? It's much broader in making sure it used to be 10 domains. I think they're down to 6 or 7 now. They're always changing it. But yes, it is focused on sort of the core general areas. To me, what CISSP does a great job in is making sure you know the terminology, you understand the theories, you understand the concepts. So when you go in and you start talking about CIA or any of these other terms, you understand and know what they mean and where they fit. But yes, I would not consider the CISSP actually teaches you how to do specific job functions. It's much more focused on the general knowledge and the general information you need to be a security professional. So, what is the biggest insider threat? Look to your left and look to your right. Right? It's really anybody in the organization. To me, the biggest insider threat is the person that has the most access. The person that has the most access that is not monitored and not tracked. Now, some people do get mad at me when I say that because typically the more access you have, the more trusted. So you're basically going in and saying, Eric, you're saying the person that's been at the company the longest with the most access to everything is our biggest threat. Absolutely. Because the impact, right? If you have somebody who's been at the organization for a day and has access to one file, that's not a big threat. Who cares if they steal it? They steal it, right? It's not going to cripple your organization. But if you have somebody who's been there for 10 or 15 years and they steal from the organization and they have access to everything, that's a much, much bigger impact to the organization. So it really comes down to whoever has the most access. Okay, so yeah, they were just answering to Adam. The intelligence service and DoD standards are a superset or overlay. The NIST stocks are the federal baseline. So yeah, there's overlays on top of the different classification models that are there. Regarding the topic of information classification in the organization, what do you think is the best way to create a culture that actually does that? First and foremost is to just start making people aware and understand the sensitivity of data. Because today, where you have a computer and you're sending email, you're surfing the web, you're checking the internet, you're downloading documents, you're uploading documents, you're sending documents, you're receiving documents, the lines between public and private have blurred to the point where most people don't even recognize they're there, right? We've seen cases where well intentioned people within an organization have sent highly classified trade secrets out to people that had no business accessing it. And when they went and talked to the person, they're like, I didn't realize I was doing it, right? That there's all these documents, and I was sending documents to different clients. I didn't realize that some documents were sensitive and some documents weren't, right? To them, they just blur this line of documents or documents or documents, and we can send documents to people. So it really starts with starting to draw that line in the sand saying, okay. I know we work and live on computers, but there is public documents and there are private documents. There are documents that if we give away will not impact the organization, and there's documents that are very sensitive that could negatively impact the organization or even put us out of business. And then start differentiating between them, putting them on different VLANs, having different segments, having different logins, having different banner messages, different ways in place. But really, what you're starting with classification is simple. Is it public or is it private? The biggest mistake I see organizations do with data classification is they come up with this overly complex scheme that nobody can understand and nobody can implement. And then nobody can follow it. Keep it super simple. You really want to get in and just say, okay, public, private, raise the awareness and let people understand that there is a difference between those two sets of documents. What is the base policies that should exist in an organization? First and foremost, you got to have a general security policy, right, for the organization and procedures that show them how to implement those steps. Then, based on the size of the organization, you would want to have policies and procedures for each of the business units and each of the potential regions. So, a lot of it really does depend on the organization, the size, and what you're dealing with. But you do have to have policies and procedures that do cover the core areas, the core focus, and the core technologies. But like I said, that one really depends on a lot of different factors in the organization. Hello, Dr. E. I am super close to getting a BISO role at a global asset management company. Awesome. Congrats, my friend, for its APAC business. Had 6 interviews so far and waiting for the outcome actually. Awesome. Keep me posted, right? Keep us posted. Let us know how it goes. And once again, I'm sure you did this, but make sure you're doing very professional follow-ups with the organization, not overdo it, but at every few days or so, just a nice little professional follow-up of, hey, you're super excited to join the organization. You think you can make a positive impact. If there's any additional information you need, please let me know. And I look forward to starting to work at your company. So notice a few things there. Is one, you're going in and showing that you're interested and excited. But notice I didn't say, I'm excited to hear back. You said, I'm excited to start working at your company. So you're planting that seed already that you are their go-to person. So definitely keep us posted. Love to hear how that goes. You have a second part. Okay, sorry, I didn't see that. The lessons I had from your videos helped me to go so far. Thank you so much for all the free content out there. Is it common to have so many interviews for the BISO role? Yes. That is very, very common. Typically with CISO, BISO, anything where you're having an officer or a chief, you're going to be anywhere between 6 to 8 interviews. So that is actually that's actually a good sign, by the way. If they only did 1 or 2 interviews with you and said, hey, we're super interested, I'd be like, you probably got cut and they just don't want to tell you, right? Because 1 or 2 is very, very rare. It could happen. But 6 to 8, like I said, is definitely more in the sweet spot. So that is absolutely where you want to be. So definitely keep us posted. How a CISO should react when board of directors and CEO show less interest to information security related concerns. The way you should react is find out why. Ask them. I know this sounds like crazy talk, right? And people always push back on me, but I actually, in a very nice professional way, call them out. I actually did that in one of the meetings. I was called in. I'm often brought in to brief board of directors and CEOs. And after 5 minutes, I said, okay, I'm just going to be honest. Your time is very valuable, and I want to make sure that I respect that time. You do not seem like you're really engaged in this. It doesn't sound like you're interested in cyber. Is that true? Is this something that's not of interest? Or is there a different angle I can take that's more important to you, or something that is a bigger concern that you want to worry about? Ask them. I just ask them, go, hey, I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like this is a topic that's of high interest. Is there another topic that I can cover that's more important to you? And like I said, there might be an awkward pause because most people don't do that. But I found in my experience, if you do it respectful, they actually like that. They say, thank you. That's a great question. And then they'll give you a good answer and they'll give you some good feedback. And normally what you'll find is it's not what you think. Most of the time you think they weren't interested in security, but what you'll hear is, listen, Eric, we've been down this road before. We've had 5 people brief the board and nothing really changes. So to me, it's not really something that I want to focus on. I know we need to have this every year, but it's not something that's high priority to me. And then you follow up. Okay, so what about cybersecurity does concern you? Is there any area of cyber that does concern you that maybe we can focus or talk about or address that specific topic to try to help you? And then drill down, keep pulling that string in a professional manner until you get to a point where you have some clarification. Because 2 things that I find are almost always true. What you perceive in reality are often not the same. So when you're perceiving that they're not interested or this is not important to them, my guess is that's probably not the case. And 2, the issue is probably easy to fix if you were aware or knew about it. But the 2 big issues is everybody jumps to a false conclusion and never asks for clarification on what the issue or problem is. So I would just say, keep an open mind. Don't jump to a conclusion, and ask some follow-up questions to try to figure out what the real root cause is in that case. Well, that takes us to our time, and that also coincidentally takes us to the end of our questions. So once again, thank you so much. I'm glad to be back in a rhythm. I'm going to be traveling on the West Coast next week, so we're on for 9:30. I think it'll be 7:30. I'm in Arizona, and Arizona doesn't follow daylight savings, so I think they're now 2 hours. But I'll jump on. We'll spend some time next week. So have a great week. Come up with some great questions, and if we can help you in any way, shape, or form, further your career, if you're interested in any of our certifications or paid coaching programs, make sure you drop me a line at ecole@secure-anchor.com, and somebody will get back to you with some more information. Have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you in about 7 days. Thanks so much and take care.